All right, so next few slides will discuss language development, and we always talk about language when we talk about cognitive development. As a matter of fact, language is going to be the premier cognitive accomplishment of early childhood. We talked about how language is a symbolic representation. So, symbolic thought is going to produce language, and during the early childhood years, we have actually a sensitive period window for language development. You will notice that the preschooler talks about everything and anything. They're not really faced by mispronunciation or inappropriate context that can stop them from saying what's on their mind. So they're not really self-critical yet of saying something or pronouncing it the wrong way. So they talk, and they talk about everything. They actually improve in the amount of vocabulary that they have. The pronunciation is going to be improved, and definitely more complex sentences. So grammar is going to also improve. Language is also considered an important cultural tool, according to Vygotsky. So we use language to advance that development of cognition. So a mentor or a parent uses that product or that tool, that cultural tool, to help their child learn a particular skill. And Vygotsky said that we use language in one of two forms. The typical type that we use it is what he called social mediation, and that is basically the socializing, the interaction, the speech, the words that we use to teach our children something and to read with them or help them learn a skill. And this could be formal or informal or casual conversation. But the other way that we use language, he said, is the concept of private speech or an internal dialogue. And this internal dialogue occurs when we really talk to ourselves. But you will see this in in childhood, but I don't think it goes away, because I know for one that I talk to myself sometimes, especially when I'm stressed or I am trying to focus. I will go over certain things that I have to do, or I will walk myself through a process, or I will repeat certain items in my mind so I can kind of take it out of my mind and put it down on a list or a piece of paper. Children engage in that as well. So private speech is actually a positive tool. It's a good thing to talk to yourself because it improves the cognitive development and it aids that language development as well. So you can actually see children engaging in that in the next video. So I want you to take a look at the little girl who is using private speech while she was playing. Now, we said that language is going to expand and improve dramatically during the preschool years, and we're going to experience during these years a vocabulary explosion. So the average child might know 500 words by the first stage of development, the first 2 years, but now within the next 3 or 4 years, that amount of language is literally going to explode to more than 10,000 words by age 6. And this expansion is huge, and there is a way that allows for this expansion to happen. And that is social mediation. So the conversation that the child is having with their parent or adult or other children around them will improve or aid the development of that language. Now, while we said that the number of vocabulary is going to improve, there might not be an improvement as fast in the concept of understanding or a complete understanding of certain context of words. So, for example, if the child might understand what the word time means and the word flies means, but when you put them together, when you say time flies, what you're insinuating is that time passes quickly. This is a higher level of cognition that the child might not be at yet in the early childhood years. Now, in order for vocabulary to expand at this rate, there is going to be something called fast mapping that's taking place that's going to aid that development of language. And fast mapping means the speedy and sometimes imprecise way to learn words. So a child might be exposed to a word once, and they place it in their, remember we talked about the mental structure that has file folders, so they can place that word in one file, and then they might hear another word and they might fast map it into the same file folder temporarily until they get more information and require moving it somewhere else. So initially, they might go to the zoo and learn about a horse, and then they learn the word camel, the word zebra, and the word donkey. And to the first stage of language development let's say at age 2.5 or 3, they might be placing all of these animals under horse. So all of these might be called horse, or all female adults in their life might be called mama. But then the more you read, the more you explain, the more you give them information, they start to, again, reassemble that folder and start to differentiate between the words. So this is what makes the ability of a child to go from 500 to 10,000, like we said. So closely related to fast mapping is another concept called logical extension. So after learning a particular word, the child might actually use that word to describe something else that might not be in the same category, but they're applying the same concept to it. So a child might have been taught the word Dalmatian for this dog, and then if they were exposed to a new animal and they saw something similar, logically extending that concept, they might call this a Dalmatian cow. Again, this is a mistake that they might fall into due to their logical thinking of extending the same application, the same concept to other objects or other items. Code switching is another example of fast mapping. The child might learn a particular word and put it in their, in its own file folder, and then learn another word in a different language. So bilingual children will fall trap into this code switching, which is trying to retrieve a particular word in a conversation, but it's not coming out from the language that they are using, so they might substitute with another word from the other language that they have. Now, code switching is a very sophisticated form of cognition. It actually shows how versatile your brain is in recalling from two different kind of categories or two different suppositories. So really code switching not to be mistaken as a child who's confused or doesn't know how to carry a conversation in one language. As a matter of fact, us adults, we tend to do code switching even at the adult level when we are having a conversation with another person and we switch back and forth between our two languages if we are bilingual. Language learning is, of course, not useful if there was no rules to govern those words that we learned. So a bunch of words, a rich vocabulary is not going to make you fluent in a language. If you do not know the structure and the techniques and what comes before what and how to make a plural, how to do a past tense and the pronouns, all of those things are what it's kind of like the glue that puts the words together to make sense out of it. And children who are learning the language are going to utilize grammar as they listen to conversations in front of them. They are learning through two forms. One, through the teachings of the adult. So the adult is modeling the language, so they're learning from the adult. And they're also having their own LAD in their mind. They are building based on that information that they're getting from the adult. So they might trap into what is called over regularization. And this means that they will apply a rule that they learned or they grasped from the conversation that was said in front of them, in order for them to make that language seem more regular than it actually is. So a preschooler can easily apply the concept of adding an S to make plurals or adding ED to make something past tense, and might be heard saying something like, I goed to the store. Now, there is no way that that the child had heard an adult say the sentence, I go to the store. That goes to confirm what Chomsky at one point proposed, if you guys remember, that the child with their own LAD or their mental structure, they are already applying the rules of language, coming up with regulation of the language, and that's why they will say something like, I go to the store. Now, the correct way to address this as an adult is to not laugh at the child or think that it is funny or belittle them, but actually to just correct them as a matter of fact way. So you would just repeat after the child saying, oh, you went to the store, and that's it, without, of course, criticizing them.